Hi everybody, it's Az here from Heal vs Babyface with the second of the 3 new Raid Finder encounter bosses that are added onto the live servers this week. We've already dealt with Tortos, and now it's the turn of Megaera, and this is all wrapped up in something called Forgotten Depths, and I wish at times it had been forgotten because the trash is immensely annoying and this boss is just not that interesting. And the reason why is there are plenty of mechanics, but these mechanics tend to be, the vast majority of the time, passive. And so because they're passive mechanics, it actually means we're not physically active in the fight all that much. In actual fact, I just found myself jumping from one head to another head to another head back to another head, and it all felt a wee bit dull. There was very little for me to actually do. But let's get to the abilities at hand. And Megaera, her body is protected by something called Concealing Fog, which prevents her body and also any distant heads, and we'll get onto them a little later, from being targeted directly. The way that she takes damage is by something called one body, many heads. And when you kill one of the heads in front of you, and there are 3, there's fire, ice and poison, the Megaera's body takes damage equal to the maximum HP of the head that you've killed. 2 more heads though will grow in its place. One to replace the head that you've killed in front, and also another in the Concealing Fog, which cannot be targeted directly and is classed as a distant head. So all in all, I think you have to kill about 7 or 8 heads to defeat this boss. Now, once you kill a head, she'll gain an ability called Rampage, where for 20 seconds she will inflict 29,000 elemental damage to all players every second. Now, the damage dealt by a particular element is increased by 15% for each additional head that the element has present. So if we kill a fire head, then one fire head will respawn and another fire head will spawn in the Concealing Fog as a distant head. Therefore, the next time she does a rampage with those 2 active, they'll gain 15% extra damage. She'll also do something called Hydra Frenzy, and whenever one of Megaera's heads is killed, the heads remaining outside of the Concealing Fog are healed up to full, and their attack speeds increased by 20%, and this will stack. Therefore, you must all be targeting the same head. There is no point in spreading damage on this fight. She also gains Elemental Blood of Megaera, and as Megaera gains new heads of a given type, her Elemental Blood increases the damage inflicted by all heads of the same type by 10% for each additional head that is active, and this will stack. So if you kill 2 fire heads, one respawns back where you've killed it, and then 2 more are respawning in the Concealed Fog. Therefore, they will gain 20% extra damage, 10% for each of those additional heads. Also, just be on the lookout for something called Megaera's Rage, because Megaera's heads that are outside of the Concealing Fog will begin to spit at their target when they have nobody within melee range. So although the raid's focused on one particular head, the tank has still got to make sure that the other 2 heads are both being tanked, preferably facing away from the raid, but both within melee range, even through the Rampage's healers. Just be sure you can still target that second tank and make sure that they're healed up during this big damage phase. If you don't, then it'll inflict 137,500 elemental damage to all players within 5 yards of the impact. Therefore, there could be plenty of splash damage being dealt. Always make sure people are in melee range. Now let's get on to the actual heads themselves. And first up, the Flaming Head. And it can do something called Cinders, which is a magic effect. And it's only cast by the heads that are inside of the Concealing Fog, where it'll ignite a random player, inflicting 57,750 fire damage and an additional 41,250 fire damage every second for 30 seconds. But healers, it's a magic effect and can be dispelled, but be very careful where you dispel it. If you've got Cinders on you, move out of the raid away from the other players, then allow the healer to dispel you. Otherwise, you might get dispelled in the middle of the raid, and if you do that, then a pool of flames will be created at the target's location and will remain for 1 minute, and this will inflict 57,750 fire damage to every player every second within 5 yards of it. Later on in the vid, you'll see people not moving out of it and just taking oodles of damage. Now, if the frost head has done something called icy ground and the pool comes in contact with this icy ground, then it will actually get rid of it. But we'll get onto that when we do the frost head. The second ability the fire head does is called Ignite Flesh, where it will breathe a flame on all players in front of her, inflicting 70,125 fire damage every second for 3 seconds. Players that are hit will burn for an additional 16,500 fire damage every second for 45 seconds, and this effect will stack. That's why we bounce from the fire head to the poison head. It allows that debuff to drop off by time the next head spawn back in. Now this is the interesting one, because this is the frost head which we're not killing. If we were to kill a frost head and it spawned an additional head in the concealing fog, then it would be able to do something called Torrent of Ice, where it will channel a beam of ice at a random player, inflicting 33,000 frost damage at the point of contact every half a second for 8 seconds, and the beam freezes the ground, creating that icy ground effect for 1 minute. It will also douse any cinder pools that it comes into contact with too, so they both cancel themselves out. Now the icy ground itself will inflict 37,400 frost damage every second to all players who touch it, and also reduce their movement speed by 5%, which can stack up to 20 times. Doesn't take a mathematician of great origin to work out that means you will be rooted to the spot. It can also do something called Arctic Freeze, which we do get within this conflict, and it will breathe ice on all players in front of her, inflicting 70,125 frost damage every 1 second for 3 seconds. Players hit will begin to freeze, and they'll become stunned for 20 seconds if they receive 5 stacks. That's why you should always have it targeted away from the raid. Which leads us on to the final head, the poison head, and its first ability called Acid Rain. Once more only castable by the heads inside of the concealing fog, where she'll spit acid at a random player, inflicting 215,000 nature damage to all players upon impact. The damage though is reduced the further away you are from that initial point where it strikes the raid. I think this is a vain attempt to prevent the raid from stacking up and to get them spread, but you can see the big green swirl on the ground when it's incoming. You just have to step out, let it hit, and then stack back up for good heals. The other ability is called Rot Armour, where she'll breathe a corrosive acid on all players in front of her, inflicting 70,125 nature damage every second for 3 seconds. Now players that are hit take 6% increased damage from all sources for 45 seconds, and this does stack, and that is why we bounce the poison head with the fire head. By the time we've killed one, the debuff's dropped and we can go back onto the other head. Now all in all, I think this fight from start to finish was pretty dull. The trash was boring and mindless, the environment is pretty uninspiring, the boss itself is just a reskin from Blackrock, and then of course the abilities, the vast majority of them were actually passive with not a lot for the raid to do. So not my favourite by any stretch of the imagination. But let me know what you think, and I hope you enjoyed the vid. Please do like, comment and subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Twitter and also like my Facebook, and I'll be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care everybody. Bye bye.